Welcome to Excel and Business Math video number 7. Hey, in this video, we got to talk about style formatting. Hey, wait a second. Business math has style? You betcha we can add style. And we'll see things like fill, font, border, indent, format, painter, styles, and much more. Now, here's our list of topics. And some of the examples we'll see is how to do indent, how to do specialized borders, the ever-important format cells dialog box, how to copy just formatting using the format painter, the mini toolbar, style, how to clear just formatting, and the last topic listed here, which really should be first, because this is the first example we're going to have, is how to color a sheet tab. Now look down here. Our convention for this class is the sheets that we're going to work on should be blue, and then the red sheets are the answer. So how do I change the color? No problem. Right-click the sheet, point to Tab Color, and select your color. I'm going to select this blue. Guess what? If you don't see that blue, come down to More Colors. And this More Colors is also up in Fill and Font Color. So if you don't see the color you want, More Colors. Not only do we have this option here for Standard, but we could define a custom color. I'm going to go to Standard and True Blue right there. I'm going to select that one and OK. If I click back on the yellow, which means information or text, we can clearly see it now has blue fill color. I'm going to click on Style Format. Now, before we look at our examples, I want you to notice that, hey, look at that. There's no gray lines. And the way I did that, this is just a view, not a formatting element. I go to View, and you can check. That comes by default, the gray lines, or uncheck it if you don't want to see the gray lines. We'll leave it unchecked. All right, our first example, we got to talk about the width of our screen or window and how it determines what buttons look like in the Ribbon tab. So here's our buttons. Right here in the Home Ribbon tab, I want you to notice. We'll get to use that button in a second, but just notice how big it is. Over here in Alignment, we have Wrap Text. Notice how big that is. And over here in Styles, we can pick a bunch of styles. But up here in the title bar, this is the Restore Down button. When I click this, it actually fits to the window size that we set the last time we used Restore Down. Now I want you to notice there's the Format Painter button. It's totally a different size. So the size of the button depends on how wide your window is or the screen resolution. Over here in Alignment, there's Wrap Text. So sometimes if you can't find the button, you're watching the video and you can't find it, you might have to hunt around and hover and read the screen tip. We can read that it says Wrap Text. Look at Cell Styles. Cell Styles is huge when we have it wide, but it's just a single drop down that we'd have to click and select our style. Now we'll get to see all of those options in this video. Let's click the Maximize button. Now, example 2, we want to talk about style formatting, things like fill, font, border, and indent. And we're going to select some of these style formatting options from our ribbon tabs. But guess what? Not all the options for formatting, either style formatting that we might find like in font and alignment, or number formatting. And by the way, number formatting is not style formatting. It's just for numbers. But when we look through our ribbon tab, not all the options are here. So the third example, we're going to have to see the amazing Format Cells dialog box. Now, our example that we're going to use for formatting is an income statement. And an income statement just shows how much profit the business had for a particular period. Now, it says income statement at the top, and then it says month ending January 31st, 2018. That's just the fancy way that accountants label it when it says this is the report for the month. Now, an income statement has revenue and expenses. Revenue just means that's the money that came into the business, and expenses, that's the money that went out of the business. Now, down here in cell B20, if I hit F2, you can see we've added to get total expenses. If I hit Enter and hit F2, that's the profit or the earnings, or in accounting, the term is net income. We simply take the revenue and subtract total expenses. So it looks like they had about $13,000 of profit. Now we want to format this, and along the way learn some cool formatting tricks. Now the first thing we want to do is format the title at the top of our report. I want to add some formatting elements and center this. So I'm going to select the range A10 to B10. Let's add some fill. I'm going to go up to Font Group, drop down, and I'm going to select red. Now, one thing you want to be careful of when you're selecting fill and font color is with red and black, it's really hard to see that, especially if you were to print it out. You can actually squint your eyes, and if you can't tell the difference between the font and the fill, you know you need to increase the value difference. Now, I'm going to select these two cells and come up and select Font Color dropdown and Font White. That will work. Now I've changed my mind. I'm going to change the fill color to this dark blue. From the font group, let's add a border from the border dropdown. I do not want all borders like we've been using a lot in this class. I want just the outside border. That'll add it just to the outside. Now, the next thing we need to do is center it. And up in the alignment group, there is merge and center. Now, there are some problems with merge and center. One in particular is if you try to copy and paste this somewhere else, sometimes you get an error message that says you can't paste it because it's merged. So instead of using merge and center up here, we can go to the Format Cells dialog box and use Center Across Selection. Now, to open up the Format Cells dialog box, we use the keyboard Control-1. And we'll be using Control-1 and this Format Cells dialog box throughout the rest of this class. Now, Format Cells dialog box, number, that will give us all the options for number formatting. Alignment, we'll come back to that in just a second. Font, border, fill, and we will not be using protection. Let's come back to alignment. Here in horizontal, we click the drop down, and there it is. Much more friendly than merge and center, center across selection. So that's an option that's not in the ribbon tab. Another one that's not in the ribbon tab is sometimes you want to tilt your text either up or down, and that's available in the alignment tab. Now I'm going to click OK, and I have added fill, font, border, and center across selection. Now I want to do the same thing down for my month label, but guess what? I don't want to repeat those 4 steps, so we have to learn about the Format Painter. Now, the way the Format Painter button works is you select some cells with formatting, and when you click this, and I'm going to click it, it copies just the formatting. And look at our cursor. It has a paintbrush. That means it's loaded and ready to apply. Now, wherever we click, it will apply. So I'm very carefully, because I selected and copied 2 cells with formatting, I'm very carefully going to select A11. And just like that, all 4 formatting elements were applied. Actually, that will copy everything. It'll copy style and number formatting. Now let's look at another example for the Format Painter. In our last video, we actually added red fill, white font, and border many, many times. Every time we followed Excel's golden rule when creating formula inputs, and we manually created this formatting each time. Well, guess what? We could have just selected the cell and used the Format Painter. Now, I want to teach you another great formatting trick. If you right-click a particular cell, up pops the Mini Toolbar. And there's a bunch of options. And in particular, throughout the rest of the class, it'll be convenient for us when we want to increase or decrease decimals. Instead of going all the way up to the number group for that one, or all the way up to the fill or format painter options in the ribbon tabs, we have those in our Mini Toolbar. So I'm going to click Format Painter. And look at that. Now I can click. Now let's learn another great trick involving Format Painter. Right-click to get our Mini Toolbar. And if you double-click Format Painter, then you can apply it over and over. Notice the paintbrush is still there. So I could click, click, click. When I'm done and no longer want to apply the Format Painter formatting, I use the Escape key to turn it off. Now I'm actually going to Control Z, Z on that, because we'll come back. We'll learn another trick later in this video. Now let's come over, and we do want to add some number formatting to all these numbers. So I'm going to select the cells. We're using the Ribbon tab, Number Group. We'll click the drop-down for Currency. That's convenient. But let's change one of the numbers and notice something about currency number format. I'm going to change the cost of goods sold from 125,000 to 165,000 and enter. Negative numbers show up with a minus sign. Now, I kind of like that. But that just means that when you use the drop-down here, you're limited to a minus sign for negatives. As we saw earlier in the class, currency has a bunch of options for negative numbers. So this is an example where we have to use the Format Cells dialog box. I'm going to highlight all those numbers, Control 1. And on the Number tab, we now have all the options for number formatting. I'm going to select parentheses, red. Click OK. All right, so we saw a couple examples for number formatting and for center across selection where we had to open up the Format Cells dialog box. Now, what I'd like to do next is select all of the expenses, not the word expense, not the word total expense, but just the individual expense names, and I want to indent the words. So I come up to Alignment, and I'm going to select Indent. Now, earlier in the class, when we talked about data types, we talked about why we shouldn't be using the alignment buttons right here, but wrap text. And these indents are OK to use. Remember what we said, these buttons, if you apply center or right, then you lose the default alignment to decide whether something is text or a number. All right, now the last thing I'd like to do is I'd like to add some borders. Now in accounting, notice this formula right here is adding all the numbers above. Well, in accounting, the convention is, and I'm going to hit Enter, is to draw a line right above the calculation that you made. So I'm going to select the cell with the last expense, and I want to draw a particular kind of line. Now, we could use borders, which we will over in this example, or you could use underline. But there's a special type of accounting underline that ends up being neater than the regular underline. So I'm going to Control 1, and this underline is in the font group. There it is. One of the options in font is underline. If we click the drop-down, there's regular, single, and double, which are the ones up in the ribbon tab. But down here we have accounting. And these just will be neater in all circumstances, regardless of whether numbers are positive, negative, and so on. I'm going to select Single Accounting, click OK. Now I can see there is a single line. That line in accounting means, hey, that calculation right there was done on the numbers above. Now I actually would like to come down to this number, because remember, that calculation right there is revenue minus expense. Well, I want to follow the accounting convention and put another line. Well, actually, I'm going to select this cell, right-click, and on the Mini Toolbar, click my Format Painter and click to Apply. Now, in an accounting report, we oftentimes add double lines to the bottom number. That means the whole point of this report was to calculate net income. So the convention is to put a double line. Now, again, there's a few ways to put double lines, but let's select the cell. Control-1 to open up Format Cells, Font Group, Underline. I'm going to select Double Accounting. There it is. Click OK. Now, the last formatting we'd like to do for this report is sometimes when we have a column of numbers and we have dollar signs like this, we want to remove some of the dollar signs so the report is less cluttered. Now, in accounting and other reporting, the convention is to leave the unit of money on the important numbers or the first occurrence. Notice there's a bunch of expenses here. So we'll leave just that dollar sign, remove these, and then other important numbers like total expense and net income, we leave the unit. So to remove this, we need to open up the Format Cells dialog box. Control-1 on the Number tab. Currency is selected. We can come over to Symbol, drop down, and select None. Click OK. And now when I click off to the side, our report is done. Now, I'd like to copy all of this formatting. And there was a bunch of steps we had to use to create the formatting for this report. I'd like to copy them all and paste them on this other income statement that's exactly the same size. So I'm simply going to highlight the entire range, right-click, and on the Mini Toolbar, there's the Format Painter. So I click once, and very carefully, I'm going to click in D10, and just like that, the formatting is applied. Now, column width isn't copied when we use the Format Painter, so I'm going to click and drag between D and E to increase column D width. Right-click. I'm going to do this again. Format Painter on the Mini Toolbar. Click. And very carefully in cell G10, click. Change column width between G and H. Now, I'd like to change just a little bit of the formatting. Notice we used accounting underline, accounting double underline. Well, there is another way to do this. The accounting lines are quite nice, but formatting oftentimes is subjective. And sometimes we want to emphasize a little bit more with actually the entire cell underlined. So we can use borders for that. But first, we have to remove these accounting single and double underline. Highlight both cells, Control-1, Font. And I want you to notice something. We have multiple cells selected and different options from our underline drop-down were selected. That's why this text box is white. If I select from the drop-down None, I am replacing the previously applied underlines with None. Now I click OK, and there we are. Click off to the side. Now I'd like to add a full border under wages and salary and total expense. So I'm going to highlight both cells. Use Control-1 to open up Format Cells. And now we want to look at the Border tab. Now, borders. We can definitely apply borders from the Ribbon tab and from the Mini Toolbar. But all of the options for borders are here in the Format Cells dialog box. We have the choice of line, color, and then we have a little canvas over here where we can draw our line. Now, I'm going to select the medium, bold, solid line. And my goal is to have the horizontal line for us in our selected range. There's only one, but have the horizontal line selected and then the very bottom of the entire selected range. Now, the way this little canvas works for borders, and actually I can show you up here, outline would put it around just the selected range. None of the vertical or horizontal lines would be applied. Inside, that would apply the vertical line throughout the entire selected range and the horizontal line throughout the entire selected range. Now, that's not what I want, but we were seeing how this works. By the way, be careful. If you click in the middle, you get these diagonals, which are sometimes useful when you want to cross something out. But luckily, there's a None button. I want to select the line, click just in the middle, and then just on the bottom of the selected range. Now when I click OK, click off to the side, That is looking good. Now I need my double line on the bottom, so I select the two cells, Control-1. I select double line, draw my line. That's the bottom of the selected range. Click OK. Click off to the side, and there is a slightly different formatted income statement. Now, we have two other topics. This is going to be a great topic. We saw how to use right-click the Mini Toolbar. That's convenient because then we can apply it over and over. But what if we want to apply it everywhere, over and over? Well, we can build our own style. Now, I'm going to start by building the style for this one cell, and then I will apply all of the formatting from that cell as a new style that I can use over and over. Right-click Mini Toolbar. I'm going to select Fill, Dark Blue, Font, White, Border. Now, all borders and outside border will apply the same exact thing because we only have a single cell selected. I'm going to say all borders. I'm going to use that set of formatting elements over and over. So let's add a style. Home Ribbon tab, Style Groups. Click what's called the More button. Then come down and New Cell Style. I'm going to select. Notice it already shows us a list of the formatting that's going to be applied. You can actually, if you want to change it further, you can click Format Cells, and there it is. All 6 tabs. You can go through and select whatever you want for this style. I'm going to click Cancel. All I'm going to do is name this Blue Header and click OK. Look at that. It's already up there in the Ribbon tab. Now I can click the cell and select Blue Header. Select another cell, Blue Header. Now I don't want to select them individually. I'm going to select all 3, Blue Header. Highlight, Blue Header. So those are styles. Now I'm going to select this one, go up to the More button, New Style. I'm going to call this Red Assumptions, click OK. Now I can come down here and apply my red assumptions. The last thing we want to see is this amazing button right here, the Clear button, the eraser. Now I'm using Excel 2016, so it's a pink eraser. In earlier versions, it was a white icon eraser. I'm going to highlight this entire range right here, the middle income statement. And I want to keep all of the content, meaning the words, typed in numbers and formulas, but I want to wipe away all of the formatting. So I come up, click the drop-down arrow, Clear All. That actually clears the content and formatting. Sometimes that's what you want. This is Clear Formats Only. We would never use this because the Delete key is for that. We're going to select Clear Formats, and when I click, just like that, it's totally cleared. All right, so in this video, we talked about how the width of the screen, if I restore down, changes the button sizes. We talked about style formatting and a little bit about number formatting. We talked about Control-1, the Format Cells dialog box. This has all the options for number formatting and stylistic formatting. We talked about right-click the Mini Toolbar. We talked about Format Painter to copy and paste just formatting. We talked about styles, and then we talked about the eraser button for just formatting. All right, if you like that video, be sure to click that thumbs up, leave a comment, and sub, because there's always lots more videos to come from Excel is Fun. Now, next video, video number 8, we will not be doing Introduction to Excel anymore. We'll be starting the math part of the class. All right, we'll see you next video.